that led me into a window into marine mammals, thinking, well, I could use the same techniques we've used in fish for marine mammals, which we did. So I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll come to the next necropsy you have, and I'll bring a bucket and a knife and some formalin, and we'll get some samples, and I'll try and tell you why they died. And it wasn't difficult to tell them why they died, because they're either wrapped up in rope or they were carved up by propellers. So, but the difficulty was to do it in a way that was believable and documented well, and would withstand federal scrutiny, which I think we did quite well over the next 30 years or so. And so, yeah, it was all Amy's fault, and I always tell her that.
I have a question. Thank you for being here, first of all. On page 27, it talks about the time release buoys.
Yes.
And I was
Hang on,
wondering,
I gotta turn this phone off here.
I was wondering what year that was, because I'm interested in how long it's taken for us to develop that technology.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
like, is that from the 80s?
Well, it all depends on what you mean by it. I had the same question, so I went back in the data library at the Woods Oceanographic Institution, and I found a technical report authored by an engineer there. It was published in 1967, and they were testing 3 different acoustic release systems, not for fishing buoys, but it's the same generic tool, but for research, defense, release of technology from the bottom to the surface on demand acoustically.
Yeah.
And there were 3 companies that they were testing from, and it was really difficult to get a sense of exactly when the material was first brought out, but I would say early 60s, because by 1967 they'd done a study on 3 commercial products that were all being used by the institution. And interestingly, one of the companies was called EdgeTech, which still exists today and is the leading, well, probably the largest volume producer of on-demand fishing gear today. And ironically, they were the least successful in terms of the testing that was done, in 1963 or 4, whenever they did the study. So that's when it was first available technologically. And when it was first to be used for fishing gear, really it was, I think 2010, 2011, when there was a study done funded by NIMS. I think in the book I say that there was a guy called John Lean who was the first guy to disentangle whales in Newfoundland, humpbacks, and I had a long car ride with John, a pickup truck ride from St. John's, Newfoundland to Corner Brook, and then down to Port aux Basques, and we talked a lot. And I'd written in my journal that night that he had an idea that for gill net entanglements, which was a problem they had, where the gill nets had these vertical buoy lines from the net set on the bottom, that he should use a acoustic release device to take out the rope out of the water column. So John was thinking about this in the late 70s. And when I was writing the book, I went back and looked at my journals, and sure enough, there it was. And I mentioned this to a friend in Newfoundland who actually inherited John's disentanglement business. You can't believe that. No, it's not true. That's totally wrong. Well, I wrote it in a diary, and why would I think that if I didn't write it? So anyway, so that was that, and then 2010, really, we had a bunch of meetings at the aquarium in Boston in the sort of 2017, 2018 era, 2016, 2017, and I said, we're starting to look at this ropeless thing, and why don't we sort of mirror the Right-Whale Consortium and pull together a consortium of people interested in doing this on-demand thing. And that resulted in the first workshop. We got $25,000 from Woods Oceanographic to pull together a workshop and pay a bunch of fishermen to come, and various government people and fishing gear specialists and the folks that were making the on-demand systems for other things to come to a meeting at WHOI. And that was in February the 1st of 2018. So that's the first date in the calendar where a lot of people sat down in a room together and all talked. At the beginning of that day, all the fishermen were saying, we can't do this, it's not going to work. And by the end of that day, they were telling us how it would work. They didn't want to admit that it would, but you could do this and then it might, was the attitude. It's gradually changed such that I think everybody agrees that it does work. Do they want to use it? Well, that depends on who they are.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting evolution.
So So would you say it's safe to say the focus was on disentanglement as opposed to getting the rope out of the water like in the 70s?
Yeah, the disentanglement, John started the disentanglement, I think it was in 1976 when there were two humpbacks caught in a gill net. No, it was it was a cod trap. And they'd been in there for months and they were emaciated and nobody would seem to be able to help them. The fishermen called everybody he could think of. And they were alive because they could come up and breathe. And John showed up there with another guy called Burrow Murtzoy with some dive tanks and some knives and a camera or two. Because Burrow was an underwater photographer. And they cut the whales out. And off they went. And that started John off in the, what he called the fisheries assistance program. He was helping the fishermen get their gear back, was the way he spun it, which was really smart.
Oh.
And that's not what they did in the U.S. Different attitude altogether. And that was a fundamental mistake politically in the first place, in my mind. I've always believed that. But John became a national hero before he died. He had a very unfortunate death, very slow, awful neurological death after a truck accident. But before he died, he got the Order of the Canadian Path, or whatever it is, you know, the order you get for recognition of being a big guy, folk hero in Canada. And that's for what he did for the fishery in Newfoundland, basically saved it, because he started off by having every humpback whale that got entangled in Newfoundland in the 70s died and took the nets with it. Whereas, you know, his argument was that he was training the fishermen how to get their nets back. And by the way, the whales swam on too, and that was good. And so I'd meet with him every 5 years or so over the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He died in the mid-2000s. And I say, John, what's the percentage? He said, oh, well, at the beginning it was 0 for survival, and by the end of it, it was 95%. You know, it's a huge story which has largely been untold. Sorry, it's starting to rain again, so the truck and the roof is going to be loud. Apologies. Yeah, basically it was disentanglement in the 70s and late 70s, 80s, and onward. And Stormy Mayo, can you still hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry about the rain on the roof. But anyway, Stormy Mayo then started to use John's techniques, and most of the humpbacks in Newfoundland were all anchored because the gear was so heavy they couldn't swim off with it. But then the lobster gear down here became a real problem in the 80s and 90s, and Stormy developed a mobile disentanglement process. And it wasn't until that all then led on to, you know, the recognition that disentanglement saved an individual, and it looked good, but everybody was beginning to realize that it was never going to save the species, because for every animal they get hands on, in right whales it took on average 2.5 attempts to disentangle them, and half the time the right whales never did get disentangled. So for right whales in particular, you know, boat disentanglement is important for the individual, but it's never going to solve the problem.
Thank you.
With everything that is being done right now, are we seeing less entanglement with all the rules and regulations that have been changed over the decades?
I don't think so, really. You know, the good news is that we haven't had a dead right whale in 2025. Now, there could be various reasons for that. The entanglement rate may have gone down. The reporting rate may have gone down. The effort for looking for them may have gone down, or all of the above. So it's conceivable that the overall mortality rate and the morbidity rate has decreased somewhat with all this effort, but it's too early to tell, really. But certainly, one would certainly hope so. And, you know, there's two very different approaches that's going on in the U.S. and Canada, and there are different arguments for both, but they're both still struggling significantly. But obviously in the U.S. now, the expectation for that further dilution of the regulatory approach is a very serious consideration and likely.
Staying with the on-demand buoys, what does success look like? So will on-demand buoys in the perfect world completely replace traditional buoys, or will there be both?
Well, if it were profitable to do so, yes, they would do that. Will that be the case? Probably not. So the reality is that success in the eyes of, to quote Mike Lane, who fishes out of Scituate, and in the wintertime he fishes on demand because that's all he can do. First of all, success is that by doing so, he was able to pay his mortgage and send his kids to college. And that, but he defines success also as a whale did not get entangled. And so, you know, the success is dependent upon the parameters and the constraints that you're on. So, essentially, if you're shut out by a closure because of the high density of whales overlapping with the high density of fishing gear, then success is getting you back on the water and being able to fish. You know, if success is defined as how often does an on-demand system fail, well, it actually fails less than the regular ones because the annual loss rate is around 12 to 15% of regular old-fashioned lobster gear. But, you know, in the study we did, I think we lost 5 units out of, 1,500 units over a period of 4 years. So it all depends upon the scale you're using. But the fundamental perspective in my mind is where you aren't allowed to fish in an old-fashioned way, then the on-demand system enables you back on the water and you can make a living at it. And that's, that's the success I think that we should focus on.
And a follow-on, then, does success mean that there will be a distribution channel for, let's call it whale-safe caught lobster compared to traditional?
Yeah, well, you've nailed it right there, because the bottleneck is just that, because you need to have a volume that is sufficient to be an economical model, and we don't have that volume yet. I mean, there's a guy called Rob Martin who fishes out of Sandwich, and he's really the most active and experienced of all of the people fishing that gear. And if you go to Rob's house, you can buy ropeless lobster. But, you know, that isn't really an economically viable thing to point at because it's just, you know, a few hundred lobsters that he's caught catching in the winter and so on. So, really success is when the supply chain builds an empathy for right whale conservation to the point where Whole Foods or Publix or whoever create a demand for that quality of whale-safe lobster that leads to a financially viable supply chain that starts with fishermen being able to afford the gear and being legally allowed to use it and having a processing wholesale process that allows the lobster to be recognized as value added and for them to be paid the value added, and everybody along the line gets the cut. So the principle of recognizing that until and unless we make whale-safe lobster a profitable entity, it isn't going to happen. And in that way, you can look at what's going on legally and politically right now with a certain degree of irreverence because they've already failed. So whether those laws are taken away or not, it doesn't really make a lot of difference, but it's messed up anyway. But if, on the other hand, there can be a genuinely profitable supply chain that is whale-friendly and that is valuable, then that's a completely different story because that's going to generate new fancy pickup trucks for lobstermen in Maine, and that's what they want. So let's make it happen. That's the way I'm looking at it.
So we're really, goal would be some sort of a certification process when we get enough fishermen out there that are fishing with this.
Right, and you know, it's chicken and egg for sure, or lobster and sprat or whatever, you know, because it's really hard to make the manufacturers of the on-demand gear believe in a market to which they can tool up for until there is an indication that that whole supply chain exists. And so that's the challenge is how to get everybody pulling in the same direction, so everybody can borrow and invest and be profitable. So, because, I mean, one could argue that there's a cart and horse, or, a carrot and a stick. I guess the carrot and the stick. And so the stick is the law and the carrot is the profit. And without the law, it's going to be harder, obviously, to push it along. But, I guess I'm naive, but it ultimately comes down to what we have all along at the moment, which is a wholesale lack of empathy. Because if there was empathy for the whales and empathy for the fishermen and the process and how this is all going to work together, then there would be a lot more motivation for all the people involved to actually make it all happen. And, that's true for fishing, and it's also true for goods that are shipped by sea, which is the vast majority of what we consume in this country and any other country. Well, especially in the first world, where there is much more ability to import and select and consume in a luxurious manner, which we do. So, the empathy for biodiversity and the recognition of that as an important part of global security in terms of food and health, both of the ocean and of ourselves, these are all things that are missing in the jigsaw of the current mess we're in. And until there's more empathy for biodiversity and climate change and all the rest of it, as long as it remains a total greed thing, not going to happen.
I just have a question in-house. You all told us about some of the fishermen in Maine, one particular fisherman in Maine that was fishing with ropeless gear and doing it on a big scale, and it's because he's sympathetic with the cause. Wouldn't you say that's his reasoning?
Well, I have an update on that. And,
Okay, great. Can you hear okay, Michael?
I can, yes.
Good.
Okay, my name is Jeff Peterson. We have a home in Vinyl Haven, Maine, Penobscot Bay, intense lobster fishing area. And the fishermen I've talked to, one in particular, have, I wouldn't say they've experimented with, but they've talked to the people who are using this gear, mostly the Coastal Marine Fisheries Center out of Stonington.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah. And the talk around the waterfront is that the ropeless gear works when, let's say, you or not too many of your neighbors are in the same fishing area. But when you have a intensely fished area and you have a lot of gear on the bottom and you don't know where another person's gear is because you can't see the buoys, then you're likely to set, as they say, on top of someone else.
Yeah,
So if you're on top of somebody and they come and fish that pot, it's got to be pulled up underneath of yours because you don't.
No, I get that.
You don't know where they all are.
The issue of laying over gear is a problem for the traditional gear as well, and they deal with it all the time.
Exactly.
Statement one. So statement two is that yes, the analog buoys would be gone. So the traditional way of looking out over the side of the boat or through the windshield and say, oh, that's Bert's buoy over there, I'll set mine over here, and that's the way it's going. That obviously no longer works. However, there are a number of different solutions to that from a digital point of view, where you're either recording the GPS position of where the buoy was set, where the trap was set, and it shows up on your plotter. And you can communicate that through the cloud and back down to the other guy on the water as well, or the many boats on the water. So essentially it becomes a collision avoidance solution, just as if you're looking at a radar screen or an AIS screen if transmitting their position electronically. So the way it works is that you can have, say you've got a position marked for, say it's a trawl with 20 traps, and you've got a marker at one end and the other, and there can be a line on the chart that draws the two together and say, okay, fine, that's exactly where this guy's gear is set, which is as good, if not better, than what they've got for looking at two buoys, which may or may not be up at the surface, turning on what the tide's doing. So, in terms of, it doesn't work within the cultural norm for today, I completely agree with them. But if they're willing to use the digital technology that is rapidly becoming really very sophisticated, then I disagree with them. And obviously, I'm not a fisherman. They've got all kinds of cultural, practical, economic, safety reasons as to why they don't want to do it. And I respect every single one of them, culturally as well as anything else. I completely understand that. But as I said, if there is some empathy that is backed up with some ability to be profitable in doing this, because no one's going to go fishing if it's not profitable, it's obviously the case, then I think there is a way forward, especially in the areas that are high conflict and to the point where they are shut down because otherwise there will be too much entanglement. And that is the primary first stage of the process. And, you know, that would then gender a better product chain, supply chain, and whether that grew into other areas would depend upon how successful it is and how profitable it is. But if, as I said before, if they're shut down, then that is certainly better than zero. Now, the main political scene has been very successful in pushing any risk of being shut down out to 2029 at the very earliest. And that may become more so. And so, you know, they're fighting a battle that they see as political. I see it as existential, and it's a very different thing.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, I guess, is my question?
Yeah, I didn't, you know, I guess I can't appreciate it. I'm not a fisherman, I've not been on the water using that kind of equipment, but you would, I mean, visually now on the water, you can see where another fisherman has set his gear.
Right.
So,
No, I get it.
yeah, so if you could see digitally where the other guy's stuff is, you probably would avoid him. But
Right.
but you know,
the guys that are fishing, you know, a bunch of folks in the same area, all using on-demand gear, they can see each other on the plotter, so it's on a screen rather than on through the windshield.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's weather independent and daylight independent too.
Yeah, and that, I don't think we can appreciate it, maybe they can't either, how sophisticated these tools are. I know, again, some friends of mine up there have witnessed or gone aboard these vessels, and it's a, you know, you mentioned culturally the problem, and a lot of the fishermen up there would say, if I go out and try this gear, I'm immediately labeled as, you know, suspect. And
Absolutely.
They have some very strong codes of conduct up there, and if you don't toe the line, you're an outcast and you could be in trouble.
You could have a rock dropped on your boat from an act, right?
There you go.
And it's happened.
Yeah.
I've heard the story.
All your lines cut, or your boat drove ashore, or whatever.
Absolutely. No, I totally understand. And, you know, and the only way that this is going to become a thing in Maine is when Maine does it its own way. And that's the way that, you know, the state regulators are working at this point. So they've got their own lending library up and down the coast, and they're doing it their own way, and I totally respect that.
In fact, I got a bulletin from one of our community organizations. As we speak today on the parking lot in Vinyl Haven, the folks from Coastal Marine Fisheries are over there doing at least a second or third on-demand fishing gear demonstration. And
yeah.
You've got, as you have alluded to, you've got to applaud the folks that are out there demonstrating the technology, both the good parts and the bad parts, to get input from it, all sides.
Absolutely, and you know, and they certainly don't lack the financial resources to do these trials, because the federal Maine delegation was very, very successful in getting money to do that.
I have a question. I know the boats are different sizes and I'm not very knowledgeable in the fishing industry, but can you give us an idea of what it would cost, say if a fisherman converted a boat to modern technology, what kind of investment from a business standpoint would that fisherman be looking at?
It's very significant, and it depends entirely upon how they fish and how much they fish. So if you increase the number of traps per trawl, it decreases the number of release devices, and they can, depending on how deep the water is, they can do 40 to 50 traps in a trawl. So that's only 2 units per trawl and no end lines, and each unit ranges in price from 300 to 3,000 or more. But the comparative value of the 300 versus the 3,000 is something that I think is currently still under development, under discussion. There's a guy out in the West Coast, Bart Chadwick, with Subsea Sonics, whose gear was being used very successfully last winter, and there's a new meeting coming up in November where we'll hear more of that. But Bart's units are in the hundreds, not thousands, and that's going to change the game very substantially if he can outcompete the guys that are trying to sell it as more of a research or defense level price rather than just another piece of styrofoam price. Now, obviously, it's more than a piece of styrofoam, but what it is in Bart's system is a 9-inch length of PVC pipe with 2 end caps and a circuit board and a simple release. And so I'm optimistic that it will become not out of sight in terms of the economics of it. And in addition to these units that have the acoustic release, you also have to have the trigger, which is called a deck box, which sits on the boat. So you have one per boat, and you just tell the deck box which serial number is sitting on the bottom that you need to trigger. And you just push the button and up it comes. All being well. I didn't give you an answer, but I will.
It doesn't take.
And I can't give you an answer because it varies for all of the reasons I gave you.
Yeah, it doesn't take reconfiguring the boat itself. At least not much, a little bit maybe.
Well, the biggest thing that they found is that for most folks, if they install a through hull transducer so that the trigger sound is not dependent upon being on the end of a pole over the side, it's a much more efficient and longer range successful trigger. So to do that, you have to hold the boat, drill a hole in the bottom, and put in a transducer, unless you have what they call a sea chest, which is basically a wet bath, which you can put sounders into without having to hold the boat out. But most of them don't have that. But that's a significant price. But they hold the boat every year to do the bottom and so on. So it's all doable if it's profitable. That's the thing. It's all about the market. Is the way I see it. It's an economy thing.
We could talk about lots of different technologies, thermal imaging, satellite technology, and so on and so on. But it might be more interesting to talk about us, a group here on Amelia Island, and the first thing somebody asks when they're interested is, what should I do? And if you were given that simple question, so what should this group do? What do you think?
Inform yourselves and inform others about what we're talking about so that there is a growing body of understanding, because the vast majority of people that you talk with, when you mention the word right whale, they say, what? And so that's why I wrote my book, and I was hoping it was going to be a lot more kitchen table than it was, but it was naive to expect that. But it's much more, folks like yourselves who are already interested in whales and so on. But spread the news about what's going on and what can happen. Point one. Point two is when you consume seafood, you know, ask the server, ask the company, ask the retailer, well, what's the history of it? What's the supply chain? Is this ecologically and animal welfare? These are huge animal welfare pieces to this entanglement problem, which people tend to ignore. They look at it primarily as a mortality and a morbidity thing, but not so much as, you know, just body counts. And so, you know, obviously you're going to get blank stares, but the more you ask that question, the more people will begin to answer it. And the answer will be, well, we can't be able to solve this problem yet. And pushing up the chain. So, you know, publics have an Office of Sustainable Food Sourcing. And we've talked to them some, but the more they hear from consumers, the better. And, you know, there are not-for-profits that are pushing all of that side of things. So, for instance, Whale Dolphin Conservation, which is a Massachusetts-based group in this country, are certainly pushing the education and the lobbying side of what we're talking about a lot. There are others to Oceana, New England Aquarium, and so on. And what you guys are doing down in Fernandina Beach too is really important. So it's a question of education, knowledge, awareness, and advocacy for how these things can change. It's a much easier answer when it comes to luxury seafood such as lobster. When it comes to goods that you're picking up in Walmart or wherever that have been imported by sea, it's a much harder thing, but it's the same general principle. That it's and essentially the speed limit question for slowing ships down is because of the unpredictability of where these animals go. It's a continental white shelf problem, and it's a huge issue, and it's a really hard thing to conceive of. And it may well be that we're never going to get speed limits, but there could be much more of a dynamic piece to that. But that requires accurate knowledge of where the animals are and rapid dissemination of the information and response. And one of the things that has happened recently is that there has been a development up and down the coast, which you may be aware of using the automatic identification system in ships as a portal for information to be delivered to the wheelhouse. And the information could be you're in a seasonal management area, or the information could be that there was a whale sighted in front of where you are half an hour ago. And that all depends upon, you know, the quality of the information chain and so on. But just recently, some colleagues have been able to work with the Coast Guard to essentially open the mailbox that was latent within the AIS software all the time, and they use it in Europe all the time, but the US Coast Guard just hadn't bothered to open the mailbox up. And the whale story has actually achieved that. A couple of guys have been working on it. And so now, say you go through Cape Cod Bay in the winter and you're going fast, and you have it AIS, that signal will be picked up by the system, and you'll get an automatic text message showing up on your navigation screen saying you're going too fast. And, you know, there's been other systems such as Whale Alert, which is used an app on a phone, but you're not allowed to have an app, have a phone on the bridge in most commercial ships because it's dangerous to do so. But you are expected to be looking at the navigational screen when the AIS stuff shows up there. So, you know, that is a wonderful development because a new information pipeline has been established over the last year or so, and there are black boxes on most of the barrier islands down your way. There's one on Cumberland Island, so on, and Fernandina. And it's a line of sight thing with the VHF-based AIS, which is what that is.
Do you see any new technology coming along to help prevent the vessel strikes? I mean, AIS
Well, somebody mentioned the infrared thing, which my buddy Dan Zidabal, who he's been doing a lot of, and that's certainly getting better and better. And so that's one. Drones, you know, I don't see them. The drones have got a very myopic view. They don't see much. Satellites, again, weather's an issue there, but it may be that they can get better algorithms at detecting, you know, whale images from a satellite. And everybody is always asking you about or tagging them all. The challenge with that is to do it benignly, because many of the tag attachment processes are A, short-lived, and B, pretty painful. So that's not one of my favorite solutions. But that's the one everybody jumps at. So look, tag them all. Well, you know, you'd be tagging them all the time.
Yeah.
That's what'll happen. Well, my toe is calling. I need to go in and see these guys. But it's been wonderful to meet with you, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for reading my book.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to end this. When I end it, you're ended. And I might see you in Fernandina Beach in a month.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes. Thank you.
If my body allows me to travel, which right now I think it might just do. So that's exciting.
That's good. All right.
Wonderful, thank you.
Good
Look
luck.
forward to
See
it.
you guys.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Cool.
Wow.
That was great.
That was fun.
Wasn't that
Wow.
awesome?
That was,
You know, it just goes right into the sheet over there. Should we get those and just pass them
Sure.
around? It's just
Absolutely.
kind of what we were gonna end with today is, okay, what can we do? The stuff that we were just asking about, the stuff that we were just talking about. And, Scott, you wanna give a 1 minute about AIS on Amelia Island? So everybody knows what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we were, the Amelia Seaside Inn is a hosting site for the AIS unit here. There's one on Jacksonville, whatever, I forgot what TV tower it is. TV tower there. We've seen one on Sapelo Island here, so that we have AIS units in the area here. And our local is on the Seaside Inn. And we're giving a presentation there 2 weeks from now, or thereabouts, about the AIS unit up there, talking about the technology, why it's here, what the company is that is sponsoring it, and where they stand. They have about, he was a little bit vague when I talked to him yesterday, 40 to 60 units up and running, at least 40. They feel they need 130 units to really cover the entire East Coast, because they use very high frequency VHF marine radios, and that is what he was saying, line of sight. And the curvature of the earth gives you about 20, 30 miles. And so that's why you have to have these AIS units every 20 to 30 miles. So I'll be talking a little bit about the technology there, and what that's going to be involved, how that's hopefully going to help.
Cool. Scott's doing a more in-depth thing on AIS October 2nd at the Amelia Seaside Inn, if you're interested in understanding that little piece of technology, which I think, you and I were talking earlier, he really kind of endorsed the AIS.
Oh, very
Yeah,
much so.
very positive about the AIS, technology is identification.
and where is that?
The
At the
Amelia
seaside?
Seaside Inn is right at Main Beach. You're coming up Atlantic, you kept driving, you'd run right in their front door.
What time?
4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's on our website.
Ah,
That's the easiest place to get the information.
Any experts here, and you know, have more information, would love it, because it's all, ongoing and learning as we go along here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and how it ties into the next step of, is a good question there. Okay, that's about the AIS and about the, identification of the whales to prevent boat strikes. A couple other things that are going on, because seeing an increase in recreational vessel boat strikes, okay? The rules that exist are mandated for 65 feet and over. You had a wonderful story. You wanna share your story with a cruise ship coming into Boston?
Oh, me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I was on a cruise, out of Boston, and, I happened to see whales looking out my window, and we went to a party and the captain was at the party, and I asked him about the right whales, and there were a couple people down from him that, got to hear me as well, to hear our discussion. And then, he said, oh yes, we're familiar with that, and then on the way back to Boston, an announcement was made that the whales were out there, and that they're coming into the whale.
Seasonal management area.
Yeah, and that they had to slow down. And so that was like, it's so cool to see it in action. So, yeah,
That's neat.
yeah, it
And
was
that
so.
happened while you were on the boat.
Yeah,
How about that?
yeah. And I don't know if it would've happened if I didn't talk to him about it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but he knew, you know, that's, so I think what he said about talking it up to other people about things, like, I think that helps. Us talking to
Yeah.
other people.
And on this sheet that, we made, how can you change the story? This terrible story that has to do with entanglements and ship strikes. So, talking to family and friends and getting the word out and having these discussions and learning more and being open to learn more is huge.
So why haven't, the NGOs gotten the economic stuff sorted out? Just saying, okay, we're going to sponsor a market for, lobsters caught in on-demand traps. And we will sponsor that, and we will push it through the local groceries and so forth. Why haven't they done that yet?
We're working on it.
Why
That's
haven't
what- that's
the NGOs done that?
Yeah, like IFA, or any of the, the big environmental groups. IFA, Audubon Society, Sierra Club.
Yeah.
I would think that, any comment on that?
Josh?
Well, my take on it is that it's like Dr. Moore said, it's the chicken and the egg, and I think that there's just so little supply of whale-safe seafood that it's too early. And what he's trying to build, and I think everybody here, is a groundswell of inquiry about is it available, is it available, or if not, when will it be? And I think those kinds of pointed actions through Candace and this group and others, the more you ask, the more they explore, they reach out to their supply chains and say, what can we do, or what are we doing about this? And I just don't think all of those things have meshed correctly yet to drive more supply.
Because, a organization, NGO, could say, okay, we're gonna spend $100,000 on this, and we're going to hire 2 or 3 people, we'll support their salaries, and we'll use them as a clearinghouse, as opposed to waiting for the commercial outfits to find it worthwhile to be hiring these people and paying the salaries. So it'd be a lost leader for an organizational group, but ultimately would turn into a commercial enterprise.
If you look at grass-fed beef, who would ever thought we were gonna pay extra to have grass-fed?
Good point.
Right? It's kind of the same thing, it's just from the
Yeah.
ocean instead.
Creating
We'll see.
creating a mystique or a value added.
Free range chickens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Free range, we're paying, how much we're paying for free range eggs? Whoa. Crazy.
Or free trade coffee or chocolate, it's all coming from the same place.
Right.
So I'm a seafood guy, not a whale guy, but every time you go to the seafood counter, and I hope you go there a lot, ask those people who are serving those products, where does it come from, how is it fished, what's your sustainability policy? And yeah, you'll maybe embarrass yourself or those around you because they're waiting to get their fish and you're tying up the line. And the other part is, most of them don't know. They don't know.
You're gonna get a duh?
Yeah, exactly, what are you talking about? Now, Publix used to have a trifold on the counter about their stuff. And most, in Harris Teeter, they'll have a website or a phone number, a QR code where you can scan and find about this or that or the other thing. Many products, especially the ones that are packaged, prepackaged, will have Marine Stewardship Council certification, best aquaculture practices, thank you very much, whale safe, blah, blah, blah. And what we need to do as consumers, whether it's seafood or anything else, is find out what these things mean, and is it worth it to you to go to the trouble to support those efforts, those products. So behind all of these certifications is some sort of set of standards that says, usually there are four things: environmental, employee issues, pay, treatment of workers, animal welfare being another one, and the overall science, climate change, and so forth. So most of these big retail chains, Walmart, Kroger, Publix, you pick one, most of them have some sort of sustainability policy around almost everything they buy. And seafood is, not a big piece, but a piece of stuff that they sell. So it's really incumbent upon us to get educated why we buy what we buy, and are we motivated by a certain kind of treatment of the product or the people or the environment that this product represents. And we talked about the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch is another really good place. You can put it on your phone, and you can look up and now that means it's a lot of extra work. Most people don't have the time to go in and say, is this coffee free trade or whatever? But it really is what he's talking about. If you can create the awareness and you can drive interest or curiosity, that's how you start to build it out.
Because I feel a lot of that is marketing in these big grocery stores. Because if you asked anyone behind the counter, they don't know.
They don't know.
But I think you're right. If we keep asking them, maybe they'll ask their manager. Someone asked me about this.
They'll tell their manager, and then it'll work its way up the chain.
Maybe we can put that on our website. Some of the agencies to support when you're buying, seafood.
Or be a
Good,
real
yeah.
person and say, could I ask your manager? Get your manager, let me ask him.
Yeah.
If enough people are pissed, maybe they'll ask your manager.
I love that one. That's
Be a
great.
pest. I like that.
That is really cool. A lot of you know Barb Zutzma, and I think she is, as I mentioned the last time we met. She's wanting to get the Rotary, the lobster sale of through the Rotary, to buy sustainably caught lobster. What she's using whale sustainable lobster. So we'll have something more on that.
When is that lobster sale?
Well, it's in October, so it's already set. This year, if you want lobster, it's Maine caught with traditional ropes and use. So, you
That's a
can
great
choose
idea.
not to buy it.
Right.
And that might be the solution this year, but next year, if we can create a demand and we can get a supply, then we could, on a very small scale, change something. And how we become the impetus for, as you said, a bigger NGO or a, what do I want to call it, a industry group that wants to create a market around all this. We can say, hey, we did this little teeny bitty piece here, so maybe you can copy or move forward with it. So that's cool.
That's possible.
Yeah.
The Rotary,
Yeah.
because it's a single transaction. Because this whole distribution chain
It's
so
huge.
complicated.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just think about it when the lobster boats come in the dock.
Yeah, I've got 100 pages of information about all that. Barb and I put together. 2 years ago.
It's a lot to, what I was just saying, just think about just where this starts. You catch the lobster, you come to the dock, you offload your lobster. Well, now do you have to offload it in 2 places? You know, this was traditionally caught, this is on demand. But doing a single transaction like Rotary, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Does Rotary do, is it just the local clubs that do this, or is this a nationwide?
It's a
thing?
local.
It's a local.
But tons of people do it. I mean, when I lived in Illinois, they had fly-ins for
Yeah,
lobsters.
absolutely.
It's all over the nation.
Okay, going back just a little bit to another thing, which is more about ship strikes, okay? So I was talking about the recreational vessel strikes. Actually, Deb came up with this idea 2 years ago. What we need to do is get information into the hands of the transient boaters. You know, the 40 to 60 foot sport fishing boats, which is an interesting crowd, but we'll not go there right now. Anyway, how do we get the information to them, to be careful, to slow down, to be aware, to learn more about the North Atlantic right whale? And we kind of put together a cool program where we made up these tote bags, and they're full of right whale information and cautions, and we worked with the marina down here, and they pass them out at the marina to every transient boater that comes in between October and through February. So
And there's a right whale right on the bag.
now there's going to be a bigger right whale on the bag and less words. So you haven't seen this yet.
And then last year at the festival, a woman came up to our booth with the bags, so we know they're using them. How cool. Yeah.
It was cool.
It was
and
so cool. We were so
now
happy.
Defenders of Wildlife, they love this idea. So they gave us a grant, big grant, to continue this. And so how do you get to these NGOs that Scott's talking about? You start with grassroots and you have an idea, and then they can help you take it to the next level. So yeah, that's something that's pretty cool that we're gonna do.
You have a question?
Oh, yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
What about, and I don't know, maybe you've done this or it's out there, I haven't done a lot of exploring on it, but like social media, like YouTube I've heard is the #1 place now. And YouTube videos showing like the beautiful, you know, right whale and the baby swimming out in the Amelia Islands, you know, in the ocean. And then contrast it to, you know, one that's beached and entanglements or strikes or whatever. And then also I think, you know, there's that wonderful documentary that was made about my octopus, what was it, the octopus teacher? My
Yeah,
octopus
that was
teacher.
so good.
I mean, something like that, you know, or even a Disney movie, but I don't know, do those exist? I mean, I haven't heard of any that have been like really well publicly known. I mean, you need to get really out there where people go to the movies to see it, not just hidden away. You know, I mean, TikTok would help, all of those social media sites would help, but, you know, people have this 30 seconds is long, so you can do it really short.
Yeah.
But to get the older crowd, I think then you need more like the documentaries, shows on TV, you know, PBS or whatever. CNN could do something, that kind of thing.
That's fabulous. I love the idea. Again, what you're talking about, starting real small.
I don't have any of that background. I write novels. I want to write a novel about it.
Oh, yes.
And of
We
course
need a novel.
it'd be wonderful for film. And I don't know, are there novels about this situation and this issue? I haven't heard of any, but I'm working
Novels?
on I'm trying to finish a trilogy. It's a completely different topic, but this is the next thing I want to do hopefully next year. Yeah, I want to set it in Amelia Island. I have some people in mind. It's going to be, different people.
There might
different
be a
age groups.
local film school in Jacksonville too, where a local organization could sponsor a competition among students to make a short story.
Wow.
You know, that could be in, you know, like a preview, it could be in a distribution as a preview, or, you know, I remember seeing in the movie theaters before COVID that Coca-Cola would sponsor these short story filmmakers about Coke. but this could be a nonprofit initiative where for a very low price, a prize, you know.
Well, the Oscars do that, they have the short film
Yes,
competition
exactly.
categories and a lot of other
And if
film
you
competitions.
had a prize, then you could get some competitors to come to Amelia Island in the local area to film and to explain.
Yeah, you need people that know how to do it and then you can get the financing.
But just so you know, there is a group that, we showed the movie at the Brightwell Festival. What was the name of that?
I saw it at the library.
Oh, did you?
I saw it,
Yeah.
but I
yeah.
don't think that's really publicly seen or known about. I don't know
No,
where
it's
you would
not.
find
You're
it.
right. Yeah.
Talking about
But-
Last
And that was, I mean, that was
Last of the
wonderful.
Right
Last of the
Whales,
Right
I mean, it's
Whales,
terrible,
yeah.
but it was a wonderful, it showed you how bad it is, you
Mhm.
know? And, cause I knew nothing about, I mean, I'd gone whale watching and up around Boston, and I've gone whale watching and used to live in California. And, when I moved here and I heard about the November festival, I went and I was amazed, and I didn't know about all this, and I didn't know they were called the right whale because they're easy whale to kill, and, I mean, all of that. I've been to Nantucket, you know, I didn't know any of that, and even talking to a friend of mine who lives in Cape May, and I said, oh yeah, have you know about those whales, those right whales? He said, oh yeah. I said, did you know they're in danger and they're, you know, being struck and entangled? He knew nothing about it.
I know.
I mean, there's this, and he's, you know, a professor, and he
It amazes
spread
us
the
how many
word.
people don't know.
I know, and that's why I think the way to reach them, I mean, books are one thing, but a lot of people don't read. So movies, videos, short things, that kind of stuff, it seems to me. And, I mean, I kinda like the idea YouTube is more popular than Facebook and Instagram. Because at least there is a lot more educational stuff I find on
And
YouTube.
it's got a low production cost
Yeah,
for
yeah,
someone with that kind of talent.
I mean, you could just, if you have that video, and then, I don't know who created it, the one that they showed at the library event, just putting it on YouTube and putting some keywords in there for search engines, that would be a great start, I think.
That one's on YouTube.
It is,
Well,
yeah.
under PBS, PBS what? You gotta remember,
Public broadcasting
PBS
system.
Nova.
Sometimes PBS can be difficult to deal with, though. You find stuff in there, even they have a free app now. You can't save, but you can watch, you know, stream and watch for free. You don't even have to be a member anymore, but,
Wow.
the thing is, finding stuff is difficult. It doesn't always stay there. They'll sometimes have the first season or something, and the next one's gone. I don't know, it's just weird, but, so if you can control it yourself, with, you know, or even on your website, if you have this Amelia Island right whale group, I haven't looked at your website, I don't think, but, links to that kind of stuff, and links to it into YouTube, cause YouTube will reach a whole different audience, bigger audience.
There are several films out there, so just for your own like consumption, if you wanted to know, hey, where can I find the film that we could watch as a family, we can hook you up with that. Apple TV, for example, has one.
They have the right whale video?
They have not that video, but different, I was gonna say, there are several movies out there. So I'm saying for your own consumption, yeah, but what you're saying is, no, we want Flipper, we want The Greatest Catch, we want
No,
something
not
that is
necessarily.
that
No, I want the
visible.
right whale, I'd like to, I show people gore,
No, that's a, you know.
I wouldn't, I'm not talking Disney happy ending fake whale necessarily. But I'm just thinking of getting people to understand what's going on.
Understand,
The good and the bad.
the good and the bad, right, I
Like
agree.
Bambi, she didn't have a good ending, right? I mean, it doesn't have to always be completely I mean, you know, you want a happy ending and the people know.
Well, maybe we align with,
I just want to comment on that. So I think it's kind of hard. I think what Dr. Moore was saying is having the empathy on biodiversity, because Leonardo DiCaprio, National Geographic, did a huge documentary on the vaquita, and no one really knows about the vaquita. It's a very endangered porpoise in the Baja California. So I think YouTube is a great idea. I'm moving, but I'm a social media specialist for Barnes & Noble. And social media, as you guys may know, it can be very hard to navigate. So yeah, you're right, the trends. You have to look at the trend, what's trending right now, what videos. So when you look at a TikTok, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, when you look at a TikTok, you're you're scrolling. We call it doom scrolling, right? So you're doom scrolling. You don't want to watch a video longer than 7 seconds, right? So when I had to make videos, and this is for books, which is insane to me because people are literally getting so hyped up about books, which is great, but it's also very, like, it can be very overwhelming. I had to make the reels with not only popular music, which lately it's been like Taylor Swift, and not only popular music, but I have to use the right hashtags. TikTok only lets you use 7 hashtags. So you have to use the right hashtags, and then, like you said, it has to be the right algorithm, and YouTube is also really big on that. They actually use more hashtags than we do. So I think getting someone to navigate what's gonna be popular, what's gonna like get people.
The marketing degree.
Yeah, it's very, very marketing, very, very marketing. But I understand that because when I'm sure everyone has gone through this, when I talk about it, and because I live in Jacksonville, they're like, we have whales. Like a lot of people don't know we have whales, which is crazy to me. Because I'm not from here. I'm from the West Coast, and so the fact that I've actually seen a right whale more than people who have lived here for years blows my mind. So I think, I think the fact that you know about it and you can do kind of like the domino effect, like you were saying, tell your friends and family, stuff like that. But I agree with you on, like, I wish there were more videos like Richard was saying, like Flipper, where it's very popular and people know about it. I'm not saying a happy ending, obviously, because it's not very happy right now, or like Bambi and things like that. But I think it would be like really cool, if people did know more about it. And I think Charlotte works on the social media, but it's tough to navigate because you have to look at the audiences. You have to look at what's popular, what's trending. Like right now, there's this very popular video of the song from Justin Bieber where you like switch 3 different things and you do it in like 10 seconds. And it's also very time consuming and things like, not saying that this group can't do that, but I will say that being a social media specialist, it's hard.
Well, I don't think though, in a way, we're not trying to sell a tangible product, we're just trying to educate.
Right.
So I would hope that people.
That's the product, is the education.
Yeah, and but I think that if the 10-second video, or I'd heard it was 30 seconds now, I guess it's even shorter.
It's
but
even
if that
shorter.
could at least lead people into wondering and then other links,
With the
right,
Taylor
other stuff.
Swift.
Yeah, with
The
it,
song,
honestly,
so that
anything
people-
with Taylor Swift
So you can
songs.
say hashtag Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's gotten, like, we've gotten views, like, over, 10,000 views just because we use a Taylor Swift song. It's
But
just,
isn't that copyrighted though? I think there's some of those.
Yes,
that
and
can't
if you use-
copyrights.
you have to work with if you're a business, you
Like
have to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
You can use, like, they use songs where they change her voice a little bit so it sounds a little higher
Oh.
pitch, or they use other people, like, we share other people's reels from different companies.
Yeah, I keep thinking TikTok's gonna go away. They keep talking about closing it down.
They went down for like a couple days or something. But yeah, so that's been the thing with trends is like you have to find, and unfortunately you have to find what people like, and it is like she was saying, education is kind of like a product. You
We're
kind of have
finding,
to sell
and
it.
even when you mentioned Taylor Swift, finding a big celebrity that was willing to take this on, somebody who's really well known, like a famous actor, actress,
Yeah.
singer, Taylor Swift herself,
Right.
somebody that would.
Or Travis, what's his last name, who just joined the Jaguar.
Hunter.
He's a big fisherman in he loves fishing.
That's a great idea,
And-
to get a celebrity.
Right, who cared because he's local about the issue.
That's a great, we
And there
have
are
lots
people
of
calling out
celebrities that
Candace.
live here.
I mean, there is, like
Go with
David,
your job.
I don't know them, but David Baldacci and John Grisham live on the island. And if we could,
That's true.
somebody knows them and somebody through the group or whatever could contact
They
them.
know them here.
And then, I'm not saying those would be the ideal people. I think you wanted someone you want more like a Taylor
Yeah.
Swift, someone young, someone
Well, now
everybody
wait a
knows.
minute. When you're a celebrated author, you're gonna.
Oh, I'm under the radar. I'm afraid I'm under the radar. I'll write it. That would be wonderful. We'll see.
That'd be cool if someone did write a story about like the right whales because there are because I work in a bookstore, there are like romancers and stuff like that, but they always mention like sea turtles or they mention like bottlenose dolphins. They don't really mention like or humpback whales. The right whales are not.
Yeah. education and sharing the news. I mean, you know, I know animal welfare really bothers me a lot. I mean, I'm getting that veal decades ago, and now I'm eating very, very limited seafood. I don't even eat crab. I've stopped on crab. It's not just lobster crabs, it's crab traps, I've heard.
That's right.
You know, so
And it's not just right whales that get mangled.
yeah, I'm down to pretty much vegetarian. And even that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
It's not that safe.
But people don't get to see a right whale, so it's hard to fall in love with something that you don't see. And I think that's one of the things that we face. You know, everyone loves the dolphin and, you know, the sea turtles we see on the beach, but then the right whale, you know, we just really don't see them.
That's why I think though the videos, the apps, you know, if we can have short
for
ones,
sure.
long ones, you know, movies, documentaries, all that kind of stuff would be, I mean, I know this is like a long-term thing.
You wanna put that video back on, just as background music?
As
It's
background
a
music,
beautiful
if I can do
video
this.
that Michael Moore did. Is that okay?
Well, one of the questions I would have is that, you know, in this group here, we have low tech as well. Richard started this and coming along in his footprints, foot tracks about going out and speaking to people. So, you know, if you are part of a Rotary, if you have a church group, if you're in a social club, can we be invited to come in and give a presentation? You know, I've done the Experimental Aircraft Association down at the airport, the Sailing Club. Richard did a bunch of Rotaries. I did a Rotary, a church group. You know, again, the education. So this group here could be the source of our invitations.
Good point. The
Yeah, I-
video that he's pulling up,
I have a-
Michael Moore and the folks at Woods Hole Institute did this, I think it's a year ago March, and it's just a beautiful mother and calf off of Cape Cod. The mother's name is Spindle, and there's no words to it, so we can just watch it in the background. But I think it's a beautiful little thing. See it on your computer somewhere. So, anybody have anything else about, oh, there we go, thank you,
She's
Scott.
not gonna be her, but it's somebody kind of modeled, yeah, modeled after her.
It was pretty fascinating. We were looking, kind of studying up the pictures, and you can see the baleen on the mother. So she must be, that would be called skim feeding.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm not certain if I can cycle it. I forgot how he did it.
that's
but
okay.
but
We get a nice little 6-minute, visual.
I think
break.
that's, yeah, they're beautiful.
beautiful.
That's why, yeah, I mean, they may not look like a dolphin and do tricks, but
You know, I'm gonna look that
beautiful.
up on YouTube and see if it's out there. If not, we can get
Yeah,
what's old.
and there are, and you could even
Yeah.
clip the actual video you have, and stuff, and make it just short. I mean, it's easy to cut usually and make long, and because they have this thing called YouTube Shorts. I haven't done anything with that, but I think they're trying to compete with TikTok.
And Facebook Reels.
Oh yeah, Facebook Reels, right? And Instagram has it. I don't know.
So anybody have anything more, from the book that you've read in the past, well, whatever? Anybody have thoughts, comments, anything you wanna talk about? Last week we went through everybody's favorite part of the book or something that was impactful to them. That was pretty cool. Anything?
My biggest contribution would just be that, you know, the awareness of what's really happening out there. I mean, it inspired me from an educational standpoint to look at these different agencies and, you know, what their involvement level is, and, you know, like Clearwater Marine, I mean, they help us tremendously, and, you know, what is their role, you know, for the right whale where we are, and just to take a deeper dive, you know, from that perspective and in my free time.
I hear you. Anyone? All right, on this sheet of paper, if you are, you know, talk to your friends. So we talked about the seafood thing. We didn't talk too much, we talked last week about thank yous to perhaps either government officials. Cory Booker has just booked is setting up a Senate private showing of this new right whale movie that
Oh, the new one?
Cheryl and, what's the name of that? It's about the southern right whale,
What's about both?
and it goes into the history of the southern right whale as an example of a successful conservation effort.
Yeah.
Because they have turned that around, and then they click it back to the North Atlantic right whale and say, okay, here's what North Atlantic right whale is facing, but we can do better, we can make a change. And hopefully we'll show that movie at our meeting in January, February timeframe. So you'll all hear about that.
My husband thinks they're not endangered because he said they're just not as well developed as the US. They don't have as much ship traffic. He used to be in commercial shipping.
That's
I'm sorry, what did you say?
That's
The-
true.
The
part
South
of it.
African,
The
or
southern-
South
Southern.
American right whale
The
The
southern
isn't
right whale is
facing,
not endangered.
isn't facing the issues that
Sure.
we're,
No.
ours are
Exactly.
facing because
Exactly.
it's just less populated, less
Exactly.
business, less shipping. So that, in a way, they've kind of been lucky. I mean, because they haven't been as,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if I'm gonna say advanced, but as commercialized as we are in the US and along the East Coast, Northeast Coast.
Uh-huh, no, that's a true statement.
But
I
yeah,
was
it is something, that is a success story though, to try to copy.
It is, you know, you look at a globe, okay, you take that equatorial belt around the whole world that's warm water and all, okay? They don't cross it. Southern whales stay below, southern right whales are below, North Atlantic right whales are above, and there is very little interaction. But we can learn a lot of stuff from them, which is pretty cool.
Were the southern ones ever endangered, or?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
they were?
Yes, they were hugely endangered in the days of whaling,
Oh.
because they were so plentiful that the whalers went down there and just wiped them out.
Okay. And they've been able to bring the population back?
Yeah,
But
you
they
know,
don't
like
have-
we had 9 calves this past year, 20 calves the year before, which we lost 5.
Five, we had 11 last year.
But
We had
the,
20, lost 5.
Last year they had 300 new calves in the southern population, southern right whale population. That's pretty cool.
And I just wanna add, because you're an author, and you're thinking about the right whale in the book, the emotional piece, I think really has to connect with
yeah.
people, because if it doesn't benefit people how we are now, they're going to think, well, why am I gonna get involved in that? You know, and like, I feel like people have to feel like it's to my benefit to love that whale.
No, I mean, my
And-
idea, yeah, I definitely plan to do that. I have an idea of having the lead character would be a marine biologist, former marine biologist on Amelia Island, and her daughter is getting married and gonna go on a honeymoon and a cruise, and the cruise ship does hit her with the whale. You know, her husband wants to go, he wants to have lobster at the reception, as of course her mother does not, you know, so it's gonna be, you know, a range of emotion and happy and sad things will happen to this group, and, you know, that's just some of the characters.
Cause there's so much we don't know about the right whale, I feel. We don't know they're super
Oh.
intelligent,
That's very true.
and we just really don't know a lot about them, and I think if more people were invested in wanting to learn about them.
Yeah, so I love the idea of a novel, you know, where you develop the characters, where you have obviously you gotta have a bad guy and a good guy, or a couple of good guys. Yeah, that would just kind of whet people's appetite to find out more. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm eager to write it, but I've got this trilogy thing I've been working on, and it's my love letter to Denmark, World War II and stuff like that, so I gotta really finish that one.
Sweet.
And I'm getting to the end of that. I like to have like some sort of social commentary Mercury or something. It's not gonna be a history book or a science book, it's not gonna get too technical, cause I want people that can just pick it up and read it but come away with it, with an understanding of the right whale and how problematic and endangered they are. That would be my big goal.
Good deal.
But I think the in-person events, all sorts of stuff, film, unfortunately, not many people read books, so film and videos and, but they say the devices is taken over, But then you have people of all ages, they're up for anything.
This is Wolfie, he's one of our youngest right whale enthusiasts.
San Antonio Spurs, goodness, that's where I'm from.
Did you say you were moving?
Yeah, I thought you knew.
Washington State, you can't get much farther away.
I'm sorry about it.
All right, guys, anything else before we, part? And we'll look forward to seeing you all at Michael's presentation on October 31st. For any of these other things, Scott's presentation about AIS on the 2nd of October. And there is, and then the Right Whale Festival on the 1st and 2nd.
Everything's on the website.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the 31st, to be clear, is a special luncheon. And I wasn't here last week, did you cover that? You would have to register for that luncheon
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
We covered that, good, all right.
It's on this piece of paper.
And it's on the piece of paper, okay.
Maybe. I whipped this up this morning after talking to
Okay.
Carol.
I just didn't want to leave the impression
And
that
that's
it's
at
just a random part of the Right Whale Festival. It's a very specific event.
On the Story and Song website.
Amelia Island Whale Ambassador.
Oh, okay.
Which should be on this piece of paper, but it's.
Yeah, it just says tickets are now on sale online.
All right, I'll give you a brochure on.
Okay,
so
good.
we can
All right.
get
So
you
I just wanna
squared
make sure
away.
it gets in the right place.
Or the Right Whale Festival.